Welcome back, class, and this is week three's video. I hope you all are doing well. We're going to be actually starting math this week. Hopefully you're as excited as I am. If you are having any issues with Schoology and you still have some questions, please reach out to me. Let me know what's going on. If you're behind on some of the assignments from week one and week two, just let me know what's going on. I can be pretty flexible with the due dates. Just let me know and I can help. So for week three, there's three things you need to be completing, and I'll go over some of them later on in the video, but just a quick overview of what they are. The first one is a Math 6 pretest, and a pretest is just so I can see what do you know about grade 6 math before we even start. So give it your best shot. It isn't graded, but I am going to grade it and see what your score is and put that away in my file cabinet just so that I know where you at. And I'm going to give you the same test at the end of the year so that I can see where were you when we started, and then I can see how much have you learned by the end of the year. Okay, so just give it your best shot of what you think the answers might be, because what the test is everything we're going to learn this year. So take your time, try your best, show your work, and hopefully you do well. Okay. The second thing we're going to do for week three is a 1-1. So topic 1, chapter 1. There's Luna. Do you know how? So there's about 6 problems. I'm going to go over chapter 1, section 1 today. So if you have any questions, make sure you ask. But I'm going to be going over a few examples, and hopefully you get it by the end of this video. Once we go through this video and go through some examples, try the do you know hows. Okay, there's 6 problems. And the last thing is a little bit different. For my virtual students only, I'm going to upload a 1-1 bingo practice problems. It's about 12 problems that deal with adding, subtracting, multiplying decimals, things that are in this video. Give it your best shot, try your best, take your time, and submit that on Schoology. For my in-person students, you don't need to do the bingo practice problems. And the reason I say that is because we're going to be doing those in person on Monday or Tuesday or Thursday and Friday. So don't worry about doing the assignment on Schoology. You're going to see it only because that way I can put the grade into Schoology, but you don't need to do it in online. We'll do it in person. Okay. Now, if you're absent on the day that we do it, then you can do it online, but I'll let you know. Okay, so the 1-1 bingo practice problems are only for my virtual students. You'll get a paper copy for my in-person students. Okay, so those are the 3 assignments that are due this week. They're all going to be due on Sunday, September 27th. So let's hop into the lesson. So our warm-up for today is this problem right here. Okay, what it says is a package of cookies includes 54 chocolate chip cookies. Peter's going to split these cookies with 4 of his friends. So Peter has a package of cookies and he's going to split them for his 4 friends. He's not going to take any. He's just going to split them up and give them to his 4 friends. I want you to write an expression to represent the situation. So what that means is that I want you to think about how would you solve this problem. Okay, take a minute, pause the video, see if you can figure out how you would solve this problem. So set up the problem, set up the expression, and then see what your answer might be, and we'll go over it together. Okay, so pause the video. Okay, so in this problem, it's talking about 54 cookies and 4 friends. And what I'm asking is, how can we make it even so that his 4 friends can get his 4 friends can get the same amount of cookies, right? Because we want to be fair. So I drew a diagram, right? I made 54 chocolate chip cookies here, all right? So we could solve the problem by splitting them up 4 ways evenly, seeing what we get. But there's also a mathematical way. If we know we have 54 cookies and we want to divide it evenly between 4 people, we can just divide 4 into 54. So let's do that, and then we'll use the diagram and see if we get the same answer. How many times does 4 go into 5? Just once. So we write a 1 up top. 4 times 1 gives me 4. you want to subtract these two. 5 minus 4 gives you 1. Then you bring down your 4. How many times does 4 go into 14 evenly? As close as we can get. Well, 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 3 is 12. And 4 times 4 is 16. So 4 times 4 is too much. We don't want to go over 14. So the closest we can get to 14 is 4 times 3, which gives me 12. So I'd write a 3 up top. And then I'd write a 12 down here. And then I still want to subtract. Okay, so that gives me a 2. So what this is telling me so far is that if I were to divide all of these cookies up for Peter's 4 friends, that each friend would get 13 cookies, but there'd be a remainder of 2 cookies. Well, what are we going to do with those 2 cookies? So what we could do is divide these 2 cookies even more so that everybody still gets their fair share, right? So what we can do is you can take your 13 cookies, I'm going to write 13. We'll take our remainder cookies, which would be 2, and let's make that a fraction. You write a 2 up top. You take your divisor, your 4, there's 4 friends. And now we have a fraction. 13 and 2/4. So that means every friend can get 13 cookies and 2/4 of a cookie. Oh, that doesn't sound right. Let's see if we can simplify 2/4. If you think about it, let's say we had a cake, right? A whole cake, and I split it up into 4 pieces. If I ate 2/4 or 2 out of the 4 pieces like we do here, how much of this cake am I eating? Hopefully you see I'm eating half of this cake, right? So 2/4 is equivalent, the same thing, as 13 and 1/2. So your answer, if Peter's going to give out all 54 cookies evenly, then each friend would get 13 and a half cookies. If you look at this diagram, if I split it up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So here's one friend. Here's another friend gets 13. Another friend gets 13. Another friend gets 13. And there's our 2 remaining cookies. Well, if there's 4 friends, if we just split these up in half, each friend gets 13 cookies and half of a cookie. Okay, so this is kind of what we're going to be looking at in this chapter. We're going to be looking at how can we divide numbers, regular numbers, and use fractions, decimals, and see how they're used in everyday life. Okay, so there's a little warm-up. Hopefully you did well. If not, that's okay. Warm-ups are just meant to get our brains thinking mathematically. So let's try some. So like I said before, we're going to be looking at Topic 1, Chapter 1, the very first thing in the book. And what it deals with is this right here, adding, subtracting, and multiplying with decimals. Okay, so a regular old pencil, just a regular old pencil, is about 7.5 inches long. Let's say I'm really lazy and I don't want to get out of this seat and I want to turn off that light switch over there, right? I need to tape 4 pencils together to reach that light switch, so I don't need to get up. If one wooden pencil is 7.5 inches long, what's the measurement of all of my 4 pencils combined? So there's a few ways we can try to solve this problem. And that's what we're going to be working on in this chapter. We want to see if I were to take 7.5 inches, which is 7.5, and I were to add them all together, what would my answer be? Okay, so let's try 2 different types of problems. We'll do addition, repeated addition, and we'll try multiplication. So if I take my pen, let's write 7.5, and I have 4 pencils that are 7.5. Let's line up our decimals, because when we add and subtract with decimals, you want to line up these decimals. So I have 7.5 plus 7.5 plus 7.5. And I want to add them up. See how my decimals are nice and lined up? That's always the first step when you're adding and subtracting with decimals. Now let's add straight down the line. 5 plus 5 is 10. 10 plus 5 is 15. 15 plus this last 5 is 20. You write down a 0 here and a 2 up top. Now let's bring down our decimal so it's in our final answer. Now I want to add just like normal, just like I did over here. What's 2 plus 7? 9. What's 9? I'll write it over here so we don't forget. What's 9 plus 7? 16. What's 16 plus 7? 23. We're getting a little bit bigger. And then what's 23 plus 7? 30. So you write a 0 and a 3. So using repeated addition, where we just added 7.5 plus 7.5 plus 7.5 plus 7.5 gave us 30 inches. So from here in my seat to the light switch that's over there, if I taped 4 pencils together that were 7.5 inches long each, then I'd get 30 inches in total. Let's try a multiplication problem and see if we get the same answer. So if I take 7.5 and I multiply it by 4, when you're multiplying decimals, and I'll show you another example, you always write the one with the most digits on top, so the most numbers on top. 7.5 has 2 numbers and 4 is just 4. So the 7.5 goes on top and the 4 goes on the bottom. What's 4 times 5? 20. So we write down a 0 here and a 2 up top. What's 4 times 7? 28. Take the 28 and add this 2 that's up here. 28 plus 2 gives you 30. So we write down a 0 and a 3. I'm going to show you on another example, but what you do when you're at this point, you see how it says 300? Well, that's not our answer. When you're multiplying with decimals, you need to put your decimal where it belongs. And the way you do that is you count how many decimals you see in your factors up here, and you only see 1, and you move your decimal over 1 spot. Do our answers add up? Yeah, we have 30 and 30, so they're the same. So this is what we're going to be practicing, all right? You may be confused, and that's okay. All right, now I'm going to break it down into smaller chunks. We're going to start with addition, then we're going to do subtraction, then we're going to do multiplying, and I'll give you steps along the way. Okay, so by the end of this, you'll be pros like this too. All right, so let's try some examples. So let's think. Maybe you have watched the Summer Olympics, right? In the Summer Olympics, if you've ever watched them, there's a swimming event where some of the greatest swimmers compete to have the fastest time swimming inside the pool, right? So maybe you've seen Ryan Lochte or Michael Phelps, who's not too far from where we live, right? He grew up in Baltimore. Maybe you've seen them compete, and they are swimming and swimming, and they're so close, and they touch the wall, and sometimes when they touch the wall, the other competitors are touching the wall milliseconds, and I'm saying super, super small amounts of difference. So let's say Michael Phelps touches the wall and he finishes the race. Ryan Lochte might be a millisecond after him, which is awesome, right? So it's very important that we work with these decimal seconds. So we work with these seconds that are in decimals, small, small numbers, and sometimes we're adding and subtracting. So let's look at this example. It says Kim and Martin swam 50 meters. Martin took 0.26 seconds longer than Kim. What was Martin's time in the race? So let's look over here. It says Kim's time. It was 50.9 seconds. And inside this problem, it says that Martin took 0.26 seconds longer. So if Kim's time is 50.9 and Martin finished longer than Kim, that means that Martin finished the race after Kim did. So if Martin's time is longer, that means I need to add Martin's time to Kim's time to figure out what Martin's time actually was. Okay, so if Kim's time right here, it says is 50.9 seconds. What we want to do is write down 50.9. Try to make it nice and spaced out as even as you can. Try not to jumble up the numbers too much. So we have 50.9, and it says Martin's time was 0.26 seconds longer. So we want to add 0.26 seconds to Kim's time. Now pay attention to this. When you're adding and subtracting with decimals, you want to line up your decimals always. Okay, that way it's nice and even and your place values are lined up correctly. So 0.26, my decimals are lined up. We want to write 0.26. And I know it looks weird, but we're going to fill in the gaps to make it hopefully make a little bit more sense for you. So now that my decimals are lined up, my numbers are set up, you see these blanks, these blank spaces? When you see these blank spaces, it's okay. What you can do is you can add in a 0 because there's nothing there. 0 is just a placeholder for nothing. So you can add these zeros here and it'll make it a little bit easier. Now it looks nice and organized. Your decimals are lined up, the place values are lined up, and we can just do a simple addition problem. So let's start. What's 0 plus 6? 0. Sorry, 6. Brain fart. What's 9 plus 2? 11. So we write a 1 here and a 1 up top over here. Let's bring down our decimal. Always keep that in your final answer. What's 1 plus 0 plus 0? 1. What's 5 plus 0? 5. So that means that if Martin took 0.26, so 26 hundredths longer than Kim did, Martin's time was 51.16, so 51 and 16 hundredths of a second. So that was an addition problem. Let's try a subtraction problem. So it's kind of the same idea on this example. It says example 2. Amy ran a race in 20.7 seconds. Katie finished the race 0.258 seconds before Amy did. So what that's saying is that Katie finished the race before Amy. So her time should be less than Amy's time because Katie won. How long did it take Katie to run the race? Okay, so let's pull out the information that's important. Again, it says Amy, her score or her time was 20.7 seconds. So let's write that down. 20.7 seconds. And Katie finished 0.258 seconds before Amy did. So again, Katie has a lower time than Amy because she finished before her. So we want to subtract 0.258. And again, whenever you're adding or subtracting with decimals, you want to make sure you're lining up your decimals first. So we have 20.7. Let's add our decimal. And let's subtract 0.258. And again, I know it looks weird, but we can fill in all of those blanks, those blank spaces with zeros. Let's do an orange color. So here's a blank space. Let's add a 0. Here's a blank space. Let's add a 0. And here's a blank space. Let's add a 0. Now it's just a subtraction problem. All right, so let's take it one step at a time. We'll do green. So we have 0 minus 8. Can you take 8 away from nothing? Well, no. So you have to borrow from your neighbor. But there's an issue. Does our neighbor have anything? No. So that's not going to help us. So now we have to look to our next neighbor. So we have a 7. So let's take a whole amount from 7. This becomes 6. Let's choose a different color. That's kind of hard to see, isn't it? Let's try purple. That's better. So this becomes a 6. Now this can become a 10. So this guy has something that we can take from. So we still need to change this to 10 because we borrowed from this guy to give us 9. Now we can finally subtract. So what's 10 minus 8? That gives us 2. What's 9 minus 5? That gives us 4. What's 6 minus 2? 4 again. Let's bring down our decimal. What's 0 minus 0? Well, nothing minus nothing is just 0, nothing. And 2 minus nothing stays a 2. So our answer here is 20.442, or 20 and 442 thousandths. So that means that if Amy ran the race in 20.7 seconds, Katie finished 0.258 seconds before Amy, and her time, Katie's time, is 20.442. Okay? So whenever you're adding and subtracting with decimals, the very first thing you want to make sure you do is that you line up your decimals. Okay? Don't forget to do that. Make sure you're lining them up. Now let's try some multiplication and see how we do. Okay, so here's example 3. It says we want to put this antique map into a frame. What is the area of the map? And to find area, and we're going to do this later on when we get to geometry, but to find area, you use the formula area equals length times width. So the length of this antique map here is 3.25, and the width of it is 2.5. So to find the whole area of this, we want to figure out what is 3.25 times 2.5. So let's start. Whenever you are multiplying with decimals, the first thing you need to do, so it's a little bit different than adding and subtracting. When multiplying with decimals, you want to put the 1 with the most digits on top. And what that means is you look at your two numbers. Which one has more numbers that you see? Does 3.25 have more numbers, or does 2.5 have more numbers? Well, which one's more, 3 or 2? 3.25 is. 3.25 has 3 digits and 2.5 has 2 digits. So 3.25 needs to go on top and 2.5 needs to go on the bottom. So we want to write 3.25, and we want to multiply that by 2.5. Now here's the next different thing from adding and subtracting. When you're multiplying, you don't have to line up your decimals. I know that seems strange, but hopefully it'll make sense when we're done this. So we have 3.25 times 2.5. So what we want to do is just multiply like normal. Let me choose a different color. So let's start. What's 5 times 5? 25. So we write 5 here and a 2 up top. What's 5 times 2? 10. Then you add what's up here. So 10 plus 2 is 12. So we write a 2 and a 1. What's 5 times 3? 15. Plus 1 is 16. So since there's nowhere I can put that 1 over here, you just place it right here. There's my 16. So we're finished with this 5. Now we want to do the 2. Now, hopefully you remember when you do multiplication, you have two numbers that you're multiplying. You want to add a placeholder. Some people draw a question mark and put a 0 here. Okay. Now we can start multiplying. What's 2 times 5? 10. So we write a 0 here and a 1 up top. Let me erase that so it's not in the way. There we go. So we write a 1 up top. What's 2 times 2? 4. And then you add 1, which is 5. What's 2 times 3? 6. So now what we want to do is we want to add these up, and I'll do it over here. Let me draw an arrow. Let's add these up. What's 5 plus 0? 5. 2 plus 0 is 2. 6 plus 5 is 11. So we write a 1 here. We'll write a 1 up top here. 1 plus 1 is 2. Plus 6 is 8. So does that mean that this whole map is 8,125 feet? That's huge. No. So now what we need to do is we need to place our decimal. Just like inside an adding and subtracting problem, when you lined up the decimals, you would just bring it straight down. So you don't want to forget about your decimal. But in a multiplication problem, where we put our decimal is found by you look at your factors, and your factors are the numbers that you're multiplying, and you count how many decimal places are there behind that decimal. So for this first factor, what you do is you take the decimal, and I like to call them bunny hops. You hop 1, you hop 2. So in this factor, there's 2 decimal places. And in this factor, there's only 1. To figure out where you place your decimal in your final answer, you just add these together. What's 2 plus 1? 3. So you hop your way over from right to left. 1, 2, 3. And that means that your final answer is 8.125. So your answer is 8.125 feet squared. Okay? So just to recap, what you do when you're multiplying with decimals, you put the number with the most digits on top, then you put the other one below it. You don't need to line up your decimals. Multiply like normal. And for your final answer, when you get to the final answer, the spot where you place your decimal is you count the place values of the decimals in your factors. In this case, it was 1, 2, 1. Add them together. 2 plus 1 makes 3. That means you move from right to left 3 spots. Okay? We're going to try a few more examples together, and hopefully it will all come together for you. All right, so let's see if you know how to do these. Okay, what I would like you to do is to try to pause your video, look at these 3 problems, and see if you know how to solve them without me doing them first. Okay, so take your time. You can go back to the examples that we just went over to see how to do an addition problem with decimals, how to do a subtraction problem with decimals, and how to do a multiplication problem with decimals. Try it on your own first, then come back to the video and we'll see if we have the same answers. So pause video, try your best. Hopefully you gave yourself enough time. Let's start with the first one. So we have 5.9 plus 2.7. So what we want to do whenever you're adding and subtracting with decimals, the first thing you want to do is line up your decimals. So I'm just going to right off the bat just draw my decimal places. Okay, that way I know they're lined up. Now let's fill in the numbers. This number is written first, so I write 5.9. Then I write 2.7. So 2, there's my decimal, 7. Now I can add just like normal. So let's change to a different color. What's 9 plus 7? 16. So I write a 6 and a 1. Carry it over here. What's 1 plus 5? 6. What's 6 plus 2? 8. So I have 8 and a 6. Bring down your decimal. That means your final answer is 8.6. Okay, so to recap, what we did is first step, we lined up our decimals. Step 2 is just to add just like normal and make sure your decimal lines up all the way down into your final answer. Okay, let's try this next problem. Let me move me over here. So we have 9.62 minus 0.3. Again, whenever you're adding and subtracting decimals, the first thing you're going to want to do is to line up your decimals. So I'm going to just draw my decimal places. Now this 9.62 is written first, so I'm going to write that on top. So we have 9.62. Now I want to subtract 0.3. So I write my 0 here, I write my 3 here. Now remember, it's okay that it looks weird because whenever you have a blank space, we can add a placeholder, which is just 0. So let's add a placeholder. And now I can subtract like normal. What's 2 minus 0? 2. 6 minus 3 is 3. Bring down your decimal. What's 9 minus nothing? 9. So I want to write a big old 9 there. So that means 9.62 minus 0.3 is 9.32. And that's it. So whenever you're adding and subtracting with decimals, line up your decimals. Fill in any zeros that you might need to if there's any spaces. Okay, there wasn't any spaces we had to fill in on this one, but there was a space we had to fill in on this one. And once you've done that, you can add and subtract just like normal. Now let's try this multiplication problem over here. So we have 8 times 4.09. Okay, let me move me over here. Remember, when you're multiplying with decimals, the number that goes on top is the one with the most digits. So I'd like to use my hands on this. We have 8 and 4.09. Which one's more, 1 or 3? 3 is. So my 4.09 should go on top and my 8 goes on the bottom. So let's write 4.09 and let's multiply that by 8. The next thing is that you do not need to line up your decimals when you multiply. Just put it on over here like a normal multiplication problem. So what's 9 times 8? 72. So what we're going to want to do is we are going to want to put a 2 here and a 7 up top. Then do 8 times 0, which is just 0, and then add 7, which just gives you 7. Now let's do 8 times 4, 32. So you write a 2 and a 3. So our final answer is not 3,272. What we want to do is then figure out where our decimal goes in the very end of our final product. And the way we do that is we look at our factors. And again, our factors are the numbers we were multiplying. We have a 4.09 and an 8. These are our factors. To figure out where the decimal place goes, you need to look at each factor and count how many place values are behind the decimal in each factor. So 4.09, here's our decimal. How many place values are behind this decimal? 1, 2. So for the first one, it's just 2. Do you see a decimal on this last factor? No. So there are no place values behind this factor. So we have 2 and 0. For our final answer, where our decimal goes is we add together these two numbers, 2 and 0, and we move from right to left that many times. So we bunny hop once, twice, and that's where our decimal goes. So we just put a decimal right there. So our answer is 32.72. That's all we're going to be working on for this week. We're just adding, subtracting, and multiplying decimals. Try the practice problems out, because if you remember, your assignments for this week are the pre-test, the do you know hows, so you're going to try some practice problems involving adding, subtracting, and multiplying decimals. And then there's the bingo practice problems, which are also adding, subtracting, and multiplying decimals. So on Schoology, when you log on, all of this is in week 3. Okay, the video will be right up top, right up here. And here's the 3 assignments. That's all there is. The pre-test, the do you know how, and then the bingo practice problems. Try your best. And again, just a reminder for my in-person students, if you're watching this video, you don't need to be doing this bingo practice problems. I'll remind you in school, we are going to be doing that in class. Okay? So my online virtual students, make sure you're doing the assignment. For my in-person students, we'll be doing the assignment in class. You will be doing it individually, but I will be taking what you do in class and putting it into Schoology. Okay? So if you have any questions whatsoever, please contact me right up here on this messaging envelope. Just click new message, send me a message, and I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. I hope this helps, and I hope to hear from you all soon. Stay well. If you need anything, let me know, and I'll see you in the next video.